Hello les amis, je vous retrouve pour une nouvelle vidéo, celle d'un développeur basé à Toronto. Il s'agit de Shane McCafferty qui a gentiment accepté de répondre à mes questions pour Blog de Geeks. Donc nous avons fait une interview en décalé, je lui ai posé mes questions en vidéo et il y a répondu également en vidéo. Et donc voilà, je vous propose cette interview. C'est un développeur qui a fait de nombreux jeux initialement sur PC et ensuite il a développé un petit peu sur d'autres supports et récemment il nous a sorti beaucoup de jeux homebrew Game Boy qui valent vraiment le détour. Donc voilà, je vous laisse en profiter avec les sous-titres. Prenez soin de vous et à la prochaine sur Blog de Geeks. Ciao. Hi Shane, thank you so much for answering my questions for Blog de Geeks. So first of all, can you introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your background, please? Because I saw you have been working in the video game industry since many years. Why did you decide to work in this industry?
My name is Shane McCafferty. I am an Irish game developer. I'm living in Canada right now, but I'm originally from Ireland. I've been here 10 years in Canada. My background so far is I have made video games since I was 11, 10 or 11 years old, and now I'm old, 48, I think. So what's that? Like 30 odd years. I started to make video games way back on the ZX Spectrum, which was an 8-bit computer popular in Europe, at least the part of Europe I lived in anyway. In Ireland, it was quite popular. So I lived in the country, in the middle of nowhere, and I had a Spectrum. Couldn't really afford to buy many games, so I decided to make them. So I made Spectrum games for the Spectrum, and then eventually that graduated into games for other systems. I made games for the PC and the Atari ST, and over the years, I've made games for most platforms, uh, either professionally or just for fun. And right now, currently, I'm making Game Boy games, just for fun mainly as a side project.
Can you tell us a bit about Rocket Ship Park, the company that you lead with Jim? And about Thalamus Digital, the publisher you are working with, why did you decide to work with them?
So about Rocket Ship Park. So for all those decades, I was making video games either for myself, publishing them myself, or for other people. They were publishing them, and I never liked or got any enjoyment out of the publishing side of the business or any of the business side of the business. So I needed someone to take over that part. And round about 5 or 6 years ago, I met Jim in a co-work place in here in Canada, and Jim is exactly that. Jim is the games business. So we got together, we formed a small studio where I make the games and Jim does everything else. So Jim has been a godsend. That's how I met Jim. We were both our partnership together is Rocket Park, and over the last 5 6 years, we've released a few games for multiple platforms, and we're still making and releasing games now. Talamus is run by Andy. Andy has also been in the games industry for probably around the same length of time I have, and I've known him on and off throughout the years. I've also dealt with many publishers throughout the years, some good, some bad, some terrible, some great. And Talamus are the best I have ever dealt with over all the years. So that's why we're working with Talamus now. That's one of the reasons. But the other reason is Talamus really fits what I'm at right now, what we're at right now. Talamus has a lot of retro games in their catalogue. Talamus ship Amiga games. Talamus have shipped Game Boy games and all sorts of older PC games too. Check out the Talamus itch page and you'll see what they have. They even do some physical. They just shipped a physical. I have it over there, a physical Amiga game not so long ago. So that's why Talamus is a great publisher, and I can heartily recommend Talamus after all these years dealing with other publishers.
And now I will ask a lot of questions, of course, about Game Boy games because as you know, and as a lot of people, I am a GB lover. So Your first game is Block Dropping. Why did you decide to work on this platform, apart from saying it's, of course, the best console ever?
My first Game Boy game was actually Starseed, but let me just go back. So about 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, I shipped a large game for multiple platforms. Love, a puzzle box filled with stories. It was good. It did good. But it was a protracted development period. I'd say it took about 2 years to make that game. And once it was finished and complete and shipped, I was just done, finished, creatively exhausted. And I got what people talk about. I got burnout. So there was a while there when I felt like I could do nothing creative, or I had no creative left in me. So I couldn't make video games, I couldn't write music, I couldn't do anything creative. That's burnout. So during that time, Jim, my partner in business at Rocketship Park, he got me a analog pocket, and he knew that eventually I would discover my creativity again, and he knew that I would like to make games for the Game Boy if I just could get around to it and get out of the funk. And he was right. Eventually, after almost a year, I started to make some Pico 8 games, and then slowly the joy came back in making video games, and I moved from Pico 8 to the Game Boy and shipped the first Game Boy game, then Starseed, and then after Starseed came Block Dropping, I believe, and then after that Starseed 2, Ward Forward, Hoonigans, and we just shipped Nitro. So I think six Game Boy games this year. So safe to say the creative juices are flowing again, and I'm back on the horse.
Your games are done with GB Studio and GBDK, but I've seen that sometimes you use C language. Do you use also assembly language? And did you follow any tutorials or did you learn everything by yourself?
My games are. I started with Game Boy Studio, GB Studio. Starseed is completely in GB Studio, and then slowly as I got as I wanted to do more kind of ambitious things on the Game Boy, I started to also add some C to my workflow. So GBDK. In Game Boy Studio, you can eject the engine, and you can then edit that engine, and then use that engine for your game. So your game will be compiled and run with your slightly edited engine, and all the editing you do is in C. So as the games got more complicated, like from Starseed 2 up, um, there was more engine edits involved. That's all in C. So that's how I combined the two. GB Studio looks after all of the housekeeping. It loads the views, loads the game, manages the controls. And then if there's anything that needs to happen, that has to happen quickly, or in too quick for GB Studio to handle, I usually edit the engine there and write my own code in GBDK. That's how they work together. That's one of the best things about GB Studio, is that it's very, very flexible, and the engine is wonderful. So once you eject that engine and look at the code, it's fine. It's easy to understand. It's well written, well put together, ready to be edited. I can't say enough good things about GB Studio. It's wonderful. Next question. Did you follow any GBDK tutorials? I did not follow any tutorials, actually. I'm not a good developer in that way. I don't learn from books. I've never read a book about coding or anything, or game design. I don't really learn from videos. I learn by doing. So I didn't follow any tutorials as I learned. I just kind of looked at other people's code, looked at the engine code, looked at other open source projects, and worked it out. So during the course of making any game or any engine edit, I break it many times. until eventually it works and I understand how it works. That's how I learn. It's not ideal, but it's just what's worked for me for all these years. So I don't have any good tutorials to recommend or anything.
Now, can we talk about Starseed 1 and 2? It's very interesting to see that you made one vertical scrolling and then one horizontal scrolling for these shooters. What inspired you to make these games and what maps do you like the most?
Talking about Starseed 1 and Starseed 2, I made two different kind of shooters because, well, if you look at all my Game Boy projects, I'm doing one game from each genre, basically. So vertical shooter is your Starseed 1, and then I always wanted to do or try a horizontal shooter also, so an R-type shooter, and that's what Starseed 2 became. It kind of fitted in with my evolution, getting better at coding. Like Starseed 1 is just a simple flip screen vertical thing, but Starseed 2 has scrolling and also it has like parallax scrolling. So I was ready to do a horizontal shooter. So that's when Starseed 2 came about. What shmups do I like the most? I love shmups. My favorite shmups of all time would be, well, R-type, if you're talking about horizontal shmups. And then as far as vertical shmups go, I love Ikaruga. Regularly I play arcade shmups on my Mister here. It's one of my favorite genres. And I'm happy with Starseed 1 and 2 that I've made some, pretty decent shmups. I'm happy with.
Then you did Word Forward, a puzzle game, which is a genre that exists a lot on the Game Boy and that is perfect for this platform. Is this a style of game that you like?
Then came Word Forward. I have made Word Forward over the years. I don't know, maybe 6 times? Maybe. Word Forward came out first on mobile over 10 years ago. Yeah, maybe 15 years ago. Long time ago. Came out on mobile. Did well when mobile gaming was at its infancy. And I really love that game. I think it's one of the best designed games I've ever made. I like word games and puzzle games, and I'm proud of Word Forward. And as I moved to coding on different platforms, I moved from mobile to PC and Switch, and now Game Boy. I made versions of Word Forward, so you can also get Word Forward on Switch even now if you want to, and PC and Mac. It just felt like once I'd started to make Game Boy games, I should probably make Word Forward, and I wanted it to make it as a technical challenge too, because the actual word lookup, knowing if it's a valid word, isn't an easy thing to do on Game Boy, because you can't just hold a dictionary. There's no room. So I got help from another developer who built the dictionary lookup for me, and he did a great job. And he made the code available to anybody else if they need to use it.
And then Hoonigans, a totally different game. It's a brilliant tribute to Micro Machine Games. Can you tell us about this project and what you learned from making it?
Hoonigans was great fun to make. I love the old Micro Machine games from the past, from the Mega Drive or Genesis years. And as I was working my way through genres on Game Boy, I felt like I was ready to try and make one of those kind of games. And also the Project Gotham racing games. So tried to mold the two together. So an overhead Micro Machines type game with mostly gate challenges. And I think it turned out pretty good. The hardest thing about it, the most difficult thing about it, was the scrolling, because the Game Boy is a pretty underpowered device, and also and just not coding in assembly, so just in C and GB Studio, getting that scrolling working at a reasonable rate wasn't easy. So to do that kind of a driving game correctly, the camera can't just be locked on the car. Like the car can't just sit in the middle. It doesn't feel right. Plus, if you're driving around, you want to see as much of the road ahead as you can. So it means when you're heading from bottom to the top of the screen, the car should be kind of near the bottom. And then if you all of a sudden turn to go left at a 45-degree angle, the camera should move so the car is in the bottom right of the screen. So that all that calculation on the fly takes up cycles and was difficult to get working well on the Game Boy. So that was the biggest challenge for Hoonigans, actually, was the camera.
And now let's talk about Nitro, your new game, which is out today. Can you tell us about the programming of this game? Was it a big challenge on GBC because it's quite impressive on this platform? By the way, what was your biggest challenge and on which game?
So next came Nitro. Nitro was my attempt to make a different genre, the kind of behind the car racing genre. So the outrun genre, like all those old arcade games from that angle. I wanted to make Nitro because I love racing games and because it was a different technical challenge than Hoonigans. I had never done much scanline work. So scanlines are the way the Game Boy draws the screen from top to bottom with scanlines, and just if you can code it so that you can play with those scanlines and move things on the screen. How do I explain this? So if you look at the Nitro road, it's basically just a triangle. So if you're driving in a straight line, it just looks like that. It's a triangle. But if you need to throw in a corner, when the scan line gets to the horizon, you tell it, shift over a bit to the right. And then your triangle turns into a road corner. Basically, that's how the cornering works. And all of that scanline work is something I hadn't really done before, and it was a bit challenging because it's very dependent on speed and timing. Because you gotta do it at the right time while the screen is being drawn, and not slow down everything else. So I'm happy with that now. It looks pretty good for a Game Boy. A lot of the animation of the road, so not the turning, what makes the road feel like it's coming towards you, is a different coding challenge. That uses color cycling, so it uses the palettes change or cycle, so it looks like the road is coming towards you. And also there's 2 frames of animation for the whole road to make it smoother. If I just had 1 frame and palette cycling, it would look okay, but be a little bit kind of jerky. So for it to be smooth, like you see, it's actually 2 frames of animation and color cycling combined together. It looks pretty smooth. And that animation was a challenge because you're swapping in half the screen, because each frame is a whole road. So you're swapping in half the screen at a very particular time while color cycling is happening and while scanlines are happening. So that was certainly a technical challenge, but it worked out in the end. And then finally I thought I was finished, and then there was no hills in it yet, and you kind of need hills for a good version of those games. So the hills were another technical challenge. So I had to, while doing the other things we just talked about, also shift the whole screen up a little bit, but not the sky, just the road. Shift it up a little bit and warp it a little bit if you go over a hill. So finally I got it all together, and it works. It doesn't look great if you saw the code, but it works, and I think it feels pretty good. So Nitro was a fun one, for sure. My biggest challenge of all the games, I would say, was the scrolling in Hoonigans. I'm still not very completely happy with that. I might someday go back in and try and win back some frames there. It still drops a few frames every now and then, and I'd rather it wouldn't. So perhaps I will go back and update that in the future.
Do you also do the music and the SFX yourself all the time? Or is it the work of other people?
I don't do the music or the SFX. All of that comes from BeatScribe. BeatScribe is active in the GB Studio forum and elsewhere, and he's just a really nice guy, and he has packs on itch.io, and I bought some of the packs, and also he made some custom sound effects for some of my games also. He's great. I would recommend BeatScribe. While I'm talking about people I work with, I do all the art for my games except the character art in Hoonigans and Nitro. That's actually Brian Rollins. He's also active in the GB Studio Discord, and Brian's really good. So I asked Brian, would he like to do some art for Hoonigans? And then I used part of the art again in Nitro because I liked it so much. So apart from the character art and the sound and the SFX, I do all the rest of the stuff.
And do you have any other game projects, sequels or new ones that you want to talk about? What type of game would you like to make in the future?
I do, sure. Word Forward is lovely on the Game Boy. I really like it. But while I was making Word Forward, I before we had the word check working, I had just numbers in there. So rather than making words, you were just making sequences of numbers. So rather than spelling out fart, you actually matched 1, 2, 3, 4, or 2, 3, 4, 5. So it used sequences rather than letters and numbers and words. And actually, it's a lot of fun. So when Word Forward was finished and we put in the word check, I always knew I wanted to go back to that code and release a number-based version of Word Forward. So that'll be the next thing I'll release. It's almost finished now. I'll probably release it maybe in December at some point. So for Christmas this year, we'll have a number-based version of Word Forward, which actually right now I like better than Word Forward. It's very, very, very addictive and fun. After that, I don't know. I got a few demos and pieces of code hanging around. I'm not sure what genre I want to tackle next. Maybe a Splunky-like, maybe a Super Hexagon type game, maybe some raycasting. Not sure. I'll play around with some ideas and see which one looks fun and then make it. All my projects have a kind of a hard cap of 2 months. So whatever I can make in 2 months and be fun and publish, that'll be the next one. So I'm not sure yet.
And what advice would you give to someone wanting to get started?
What advice would I give someone wanting to get started? Well, for someone wanting to get started, I would say pick up GB Studio. It's a wonderful, approachable, steady, stable, I should say, well maintained and well programmed engine. It's pretty great. Pick up GB Studio, open it, open a sample project, look at some code. The sample project covers most of the functionality. Don't be afraid to join the Discord. I am very old and I've been on many Discords over the years, and it's by far the nicest Discord I've ever been on for game dev. So it's a great, friendly Discord. So I'd say pick up GB Studio. If videos are your thing, watch some videos on YouTube, GB Studio tutorials, and have some fun with it. There is a lot of fun to be had making a little game in GB Studio, exporting it as a ROM, popping onto AliExpress or somewhere and buying a blank cart and putting your game on the cart and sticking it into your Game Boy and running it. That's a really cool different feeling that I never thought I would have again. I never thought I'd be able to make an actual Game Boy game and see it running in front of me. So that's my advice to new people would be, don't be scared. Get GB Studio, take a look at it, try some stuff, join the forum. It's very helpful and friendly. That's it. Okay.
Thank you a lot for your time.
It's been a pleasure. I should say, I am on X and also on Blue Sky. Probably let's just keep it to Blue Sky as EG Room. You can find me there if you want to follow me or send me a message. Anybody does. You find me there, and all my games for Game Boy you will find on itch.io under Thalamus Publisher. Okay, thank you for your time. Have a good day.